Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and as always, I'm here to help you become more confident and fluent in English. Today, we're diving into a topic that I know many of you can relate to: how to speak English without fear. Learning a new language can be challenging, but fear doesn't have to hold you back. By the end of this episode, you'll have some practical tips and tools to overcome your fears and start speaking with confidence.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia, your co-host for today. Jason is absolutely right. Fear is such a common barrier for English learners. But guess what? We've all been there. I've faced it too, and I'm excited to share some of my personal experiences and tips with you. So, if you've ever hesitated to speak because you're afraid of making mistakes, you're not alone, and you're in the right place.
That's right, Julia. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's explore how you can conquer your fear and start speaking English without hesitation. Ready? Let's get started. All right, let's start by talking about something many of us struggle with: fear when speaking English. Fear can show up in many ways. You might feel nervous about making mistakes, or you might worry that people will judge your accent or grammar. Julia, what do you think makes fear such a big challenge for English learners?
Great question, Jason. I think one of the biggest reasons is the pressure to be perfect. People often feel like they need to speak without any mistakes, and that creates a lot of anxiety. But let me tell you something: making mistakes is normal. In fact, it's part of the learning process. What about you, Jason? Have you ever faced this kind of fear?
Absolutely, Julia. I remember when I first started learning Spanish, I was so scared of sounding silly that I avoided speaking altogether. And guess what? That fear actually slowed down my progress. Over time, I realized that focusing too much on perfection was holding me back. So, what do you think happens when people let that fear take over?
Well, Jason, when fear takes over, it can make you avoid opportunities to practice. For example, you might stay silent in a group, or you might feel hesitant to ask a question in class. And the sad part is, the less you speak, the harder it becomes to improve. It's a cycle that keeps people stuck.
Exactly, Julia. But here's the good news: fear doesn't have to control you. Once you understand what's causing it, whether it's fear of judgment, lack of confidence, or simply not knowing where to start, you can take steps to overcome it. And we're here to show you how.
That's right. Fear is natural, but it's also something you can work through. We'll talk about some practical tips in the next section, but for now, just remember this: every English speaker, yes, even native speakers, makes mistakes. It's how we learn.
Couldn't agree more, Julia. So, if you're listening to this and thinking, "That's me," don't worry, you're not alone, and there's a way forward. Let's move on to some strategies to help you overcome that fear and speak with confidence. Now that we understand why fear happens, let's talk about how to overcome it. We've got some practical strategies to help you face your fear and speak English with confidence. Julia, do you want to start with the first tip?
Of course, the first and most important tip is to focus on communication, not perfection. Many learners think they need to speak perfect English before they can start talking, but that's not true. The goal of speaking is to communicate your ideas, even if you make small mistakes. Jason, can you share an example of how this works?
Absolutely. Let's say you're trying to say, "I went to the store yesterday." If you say, "I go to the store yesterday," people will still understand you. And guess what? That's what matters. Don't let the fear of small grammar mistakes stop you from speaking.
Exactly. Another great strategy is to start small. If you feel nervous about speaking, begin with short and simple sentences. For example, practice saying things like, "How are you?" or "Can you help me?" Once you feel comfortable with these, you can build up to longer conversations. What do you think, Jason?
I think that's excellent advice, Julia. And here's another tip. Practice speaking alone. If you don't have a partner, try talking to yourself in English. For example, describe what you're doing, like, "I'm making tea," or plan your day out loud. This helps you get used to thinking in English, which reduces fear.
I love that idea. Another helpful tip is to record yourself speaking. I know it can feel awkward at first, but when you listen to your recording, you'll notice what you're doing well and where you can improve. Plus, it's a great way to track your progress over time.
That's such a powerful tool. And here's one more strategy. Surround yourself with English as much as possible. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or even change your phone's language to English. The more you expose yourself to the language, the more natural it will feel when you speak.
Yes, and don't forget to find a supportive environment. Whether it's a language class, an online group, or a conversation partner, practicing with people who encourage you can make a huge difference. Jason, do you have any final tips before we move on?
Just one more, Julia. Celebrate small victories. Every time you speak English, even if it's just a few words, give yourself credit. Every step you take is progress, and that progress will build your confidence over time.
I love that, Jason. It's so important to be kind to yourself during this journey. Fear doesn't disappear overnight, but with these strategies, you'll see improvement little by little.
Exactly, Julia. And remember, fear is just a part of the process. It's not a barrier you can't overcome. Now, let's move on to how consistent practice can help you build even more confidence. Now that we've talked about strategies to overcome fear, let's focus on how you can build confidence through regular practice. Julia, why don't we start with why practice is so important?
Sure, Jason. Practice is the foundation of confidence. Think about it. The more you do something, the more comfortable and natural it feels. It's just like learning to ride a bike. At first, you might feel wobbly and unsure, but with time and repetition, it becomes second nature.
Exactly. And when it comes to speaking English, consistency is key. Even if you practice just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll see noticeable improvements over time. One great way to practice is to create a routine. For example, start your morning by reading a short article out loud or talking to yourself about your plans for the day.
That's a great tip, Jason. Another way to practice is by joining language exchange programs or online communities. There are so many apps and websites where you can connect with people who want to practice English or even exchange languages. It's a win-win situation because you both get to learn and help each other.
Absolutely, Julia. And for those who might feel shy or nervous about speaking with others, here's an idea. Use a mirror. Stand in front of a mirror and practice speaking. This helps you focus on your pronunciation, facial expressions, and body language, all of which contribute to your confidence.
I love that idea. Another powerful way to practice is to immerse yourself in English environments. For instance, try attending events, workshops, or meetups where English is the main language. It's okay to feel a little out of your comfort zone. That's where real growth happens.
Great point, Julia. And here's something I've noticed. Many learners forget the importance of celebrating small wins. Did you successfully order coffee in English today? Great. Did you introduce yourself to someone new? Amazing! These small victories add up and boost your confidence over time.
Absolutely. And remember, practice doesn't always have to be formal. You can make it fun. Sing along to your favorite English songs, watch movies or shows with subtitles, or even play language games online. When you enjoy the process, you're more likely to stick with it.
That's so true. And don't forget to challenge yourself every now and then. For example, try having a full conversation in English without switching back to your native language. It might feel tough at first, but it's a great way to see how much progress you've made.
Yes. And remember, confidence comes from taking action. The more you practice, the more you'll realize that you're capable of speaking English, even if it's not perfect. And that's what matters. Progress, not perfection.
Exactly, Julia. So, to all our listeners, find what works best for you and keep practicing. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Now, let's wrap things up with some final words of encouragement and a call to action. Before we wrap up, let's talk about one final and very important piece of the puzzle: encouragement and personal growth. Learning English is not just about the words or grammar. It's about growing as a person. Julia, how do you think learning a new language contributes to personal growth?
That's a great question, Jason. Learning a language like English helps you step out of your comfort zone. It teaches you patience, resilience, and how to embrace challenges. And the best part? Every time you push yourself to speak, you're not just improving your English, you're becoming a more confident and adaptable person.
Exactly. And I want to remind our listeners that it's okay to have setbacks. You might feel stuck at times or even make a lot of mistakes. But remember, every mistake is a lesson, and every small step forward is progress. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey.
That's so true, Jason. And don't forget to celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they seem. Maybe you had your first conversation entirely in English, or maybe you learned a new phrase today. Every little victory is proof that you're improving.
Absolutely, Julia. And one more thing, don't compare your progress to others. Everyone learns at their own pace, and that's okay. The most important thing is to keep going, even when it feels tough. You're doing something amazing by learning a new language.
Yes, and always remember why you started learning English in the first place. Maybe it's for better opportunities to connect with people around the world, or simply to challenge yourself. Whatever your reason, keep it in mind and let it motivate you.
Beautifully said, Julia. To all our listeners, you're capable of so much more than you think. Speaking English without fear might seem hard now, but with practice, patience, and the right mindset, you'll get there. Keep believing in yourself and never stop learning.
And we're here to cheer you on every step of the way. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the English Learning Podcast. If you found this helpful, don't forget to share it with someone who might need a little encouragement.
That's right. And as always, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, you've got this. See you in the next episode. Before we go, we want to leave you with a quick call to action. If you enjoyed today's episode and found our tips helpful, take a moment to put them into practice. Start small. Maybe speak one sentence in English today, or record yourself saying a short introduction.
And don't stop there. Share this episode with a friend who's also learning English. You can practice together and encourage each other. Learning is always more fun when you're not doing it alone.
Also, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. We're here every week with more tips and strategies to help you improve your English and boost your confidence.
And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or send us a message to share your thoughts, questions, or even your personal success stories. Who knows, we might feature them in a future episode.
That's a great idea, Julia. Remember, the key to speaking English without fear is to take that first step. Start today and keep moving forward. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now and keep practicing.